There are times in our lives when we can feel that something is changing. Even before we can see exactly what it is, something is moving, something is ending, something is beginning. And somehow we know that we're not going back to where things were. This is one of those moments. Right now, we are standing at a major turning point. And I don't mean just because we are between the solar eclipse of August 12th and the lunar eclipse that's coming up in August 28th. I'm talking about something much bigger. We are standing between two major eclipse stories. One story is coming to its final chapter, while another has just begun. This is what makes this particular eclipse season so interesting. So, what is eclipse really? Let's start with the basics. A solar eclipse happens at the new moon when the moon moves between the earth and the sun. So the moon light is not visible to us. It's the darkest point of the moon cycle, a new lunar cycle. And this is why we call it a new beginning. Events or changes that begin around the solar eclipse can continue unfolding over the next 6 months, gradually developing and reaching a culmination point around the corresponding full moon or another important eclipse in the cycle. Now, on the other side, a lunar eclipse happens at a full moon, where the Earth moves between the sun and the moon is at its fullest, brightest light visible to us. This is what we call a complete moon. Also, what we call in astrology, something is culminating or ending or finishing. But also, it's right away followed by a new beginning. So the solar and the lunar eclipses works as a pair. The solar eclipse opens one thing, and the lunar eclipse brings something towards culmination, clarity, resolution, or closure. So these are not two completely different events. They are actually 2 points in one unfolding story. But why are eclipses so powerful? Why do they have this reputation of being so intense? Well, it's very simple because eclipses have a very close relationships to the lunar nodes. And this is where we need to understand what the nodes actually are. So the nodes are North Node and South Node. There are 2 mathematical points, not actual planets. They are actually exactly opposite to each other on the zodiac wheel. And they create something called an axis. For example, you hear Virgo Pisces axis, Aquarius Leo axis. And this axis becomes extremely important because the nodes describe the movement in our evolutionary life journey. What does that mean? Well, the North Node represents the direction of our growth, the new experiences, the lessons. Where are we asked to develop and grow? And the South Node on the other side represents familiar patterns, what our comfort zone is, our abilities and our strength, the stuff that we came with, the stuff that we are so good at. So the goal is to use the gifts and the strength of the South Node, but we don't allow ourselves to remain there a lot simply because it feels comfortable and sometimes it's limiting. We have to move toward the North Node. And that usually means moving beyond what is familiar, being comfortable with the uncomfortable, learning new skills, facing new challenges, pushing ourselves, going out of our comfort zone, while paying attention to what are the limiting beliefs or the repeating patterns that can keep us stuck in the South Node. Because we don't move, we don't grow. It becomes stagnation if we continue being at the South Node. We are going into a loop of the same cycle, no growth, no movement. The North Node, on the other hand, is asking us to grow beyond what we already know. Because the nodes are always opposite each other, every eclipse is activating an axis. One side, the North Node represents what are we moving toward, and the other side, the South Node represents what we are moving away from. And that's why the houses where the eclipse happen in your own birth chart are so significant and important. They show you the area of life where you are working towards those changes that you are meant to go through. Eclipses activate a specific area of your life, and this area can become very important and a very significant focus of development over the next month following the eclipse. Sometimes this development story continues through a larger eclipse cycle. So there is something called the 18-month eclipse story. And this is where I want to make an important distinction. When we talk about the 18 months eclipse cycle, we're not saying that one eclipse lasts for 18 months. We're actually talking about the movement of the lunar nodes through the pair of the opposite signs. For example, Virgo and Pisces, Leo and Aquarius, Aries and Libra. And during this time, multiple eclipses activate different degrees at the same axis, meaning every single eclipse becomes another point at the larger story. One eclipse may open something, another may bring important development in your life, another may expose something that needs to change, and another may bring a closure. So you can think about the 18-month axis as a larger chapter and the individual eclipses as different turning points within that chapter. And this is why sometimes you can look back at your life and realize this actually started months ago. This is why eclipse season can bring both opportunity and challenge. The opportunity is growth. The challenge is that growth becomes or requires you to leave something familiar behind. And sometimes what you need to release isn't a person or an external situation. It could be a belief. It could be a way of thinking. It could be a place. It could be a role you have been playing. It could be a version of yourself that you've become very comfortable with, but you're not growing from there. And this is where the eclipse can become a catalyst. It can show you this is where you have been and then ask you, is this still where you're going? Right now, we are moving away from the Virgo Pisces eclipse story into the Aquarius Leo eclipse story. Let's talk about the Virgo Pisces because this is the one that is closing and this is the one that has been teaching us a very important lesson. What is this lesson? It's how we live our daily life while staying connected to something bigger, something greater than ourselves. Because Virgo is about being practical. Virgo is about our routine. It's about our habits, our health, our work, the daily life that we live. How are we our ability to organize, analyze, improve, make things more functional. Virgo asks what needs to be changed because Virgo always wants perfection, always wants something to get better. What needs to be improved? What isn't working? Because Virgo is always analytical, over focused on fixing everything, trying to control every detail, over analyzing, and believing that if we just do everything correctly, then, we are preventing so many mistakes. But that's not how things work. Because on the other side, we have Pisces. And Pisces is asking you to surrender that control, to trust, to listen to your intuition, to recognize that not everything in life can be analyzed, organized, or controlled. So Pisces reminds you that there is a larger flow to life. And sometimes we have to allow something to unfold rather than just trying to make it happen. So Pisces has its own shadow side as well, same as Virgo. You can become unclear, or you can lose yourself in something, or you can avoid reality, or you can stay in situations because you don't want to face the truth, or you can confuse surrender with passivity. So the lesson of this axis, we're talking about Virgo Pisces axis, not Virgo is better than Pisces or Pisces is better than Virgo. It's about the bringing two of them together. So what is it about? It's about discernment. The higher octave of Virgo is discernment without rigidity. It's about surrender. Higher octave of Pisces is surrender without avoidance. It's about creating a structure on a daily basis without controlling, trusting without losing touch with reality. And after working with all this axis for about 18 months, we are reaching this end of the story. So the question becomes, what have you learned about what needs to be changed, or organized, or released, or accepted, or surrendered in the past 18 months? Because you don't carry everything from the last chapter to the next one. Things have served its purpose, now needs to be left behind and move towards a different story. And here comes the Aquarius Leo axis. So this one shifts our attention from the Virgo Pisces question of discernment and surrender towards identity, because Leo is about you. Who are you? Your authenticity, your individuality, your creativity. And Aquarius is about the community, your place within the community. So Leo asks you, who are you? What is your heart desire? What do you want to generally to express, what makes you you. And Leo is about creativity. It's about self-expression. It's about confidence. It's about your heart. It's about the courage to be visible as you. And also, Leo has a shadow side. So, what is Leo's shadow side? When you become overly concerned with how people see you, with recognition, with seeking validation, becoming attached to being admired or being seen in a particular way, you can create an identity and then become afraid to lose this identity. And then comes Aquarius on the other side of the axis, and Aquarius asks you, who do you or where do you belong? What can you contribute to your community? What role are you playing within your community or, within something larger than yourself? Aquarius is about collective, community, future, ideas, new goals, breaking away from the outdated way of thinking. Aquarius is very rebellion. Aquarius also have a shadow side, which is it can become detached from your own heart. You can become so focused on the other people, on the collective and how they see you, to a point that you lose your own individuality. So you can reject something simply because it's not traditional, or you can become so identified with an idea or a group that you stop thinking for yourself. So again, the goal isn't to choose Leo over Aquarius or the other Aquarius over Leo. The goal is to integrate them together. So Leo says, be yourself. And Aquarius says, bring yourself out to the world. Leo asks you to develop your individual expression. And on the other side, Aquarius asks you to understand how that individual expression contributes to something larger. So this is why I think this next or new 18 months chapter can be so significant. We're moving from a cycle that has asked us to clean up, discern, release, organize, surrender, find a greater balance between our daily life and between what's tangible and intangible, into a cycle that's now asking us about our own identity. Who are we? What are we contributing to? Where do we belong? Are you willing to be fully yourself rather than continuing to live according to an identity that was created at an earlier version of yourself? This is quite a shift. Okay, why is this moment so important? Why are we saying we are standing between two chapters? Because let's go back to where we are right now, because this is where the story becomes especially interesting. On August 12th, we had the solar eclipse in Leo, and on August 28th, we have the lunar eclipse in Pisces. So the first eclipse is activating the new Aquarius Leo story, while the second eclipse is completing the Virgo Pisces story. One story is beginning, another one is completing, and this is exactly why I call this time between two words. We are between what we have been working through, and we are now being asked to grow towards something completely new. This is why the space between these two eclipses deserves our attention. Because sometimes the biggest shift isn't the event itself, it's the realization that you're no longer moving in the same direction as you were before. So how do you know if this eclipse is personal for you? Of course, this is where your own birth chart comes important. The first thing to look at is the house where the eclipse takes place. That tells you where in your life this development is happening. Then you look at whether the eclipse is making a close aspect to your natal planets or important points in your birth chart. And then you look at the planet that's being activated and what does that planet represent in your own chart? Because this is where astrology becomes personal. We may all experience the same eclipse, but we don't all experience the same story within this eclipse. This is where you begin to understand what this eclipse season may mean to you. Okay, as we come to the end of today's conversation, I want you to remember something. You are not supposed to have everything figured out all at once. We are between eclipses. We are between two stories. One is completing and another is beginning. And sometimes the space between what was and what comes next can feel uncertain. You may not know exactly what you're leaving behind. You may not even know exactly where you're going. And that's okay. In a few months, everything will be clear to you. Now, it's time to pay attention and focus. Pay attention to what's changing inside of you. Pay attention to what no longer feels right, and pay attention to what keeps coming back into your awareness. This is really important. Eclipses time is very heightened, sensitive time in our life. Pay attention to where your life is asking you to grow and where you might be still holding on to something that's still familiar, but you're not growing there anymore. Because eclipses don't always tell us the whole story at once. We are standing between two words for a reason. One chapter is teaching you what you needed to learn, while the other one is beginning to show you the next phase in your life. And perhaps the most important question you can ask yourself right now is, what are you ready to leave behind? And what are you finally ready to move forward toward? Your next chapter may have already begun. You might already know it. You might not know it yet. It's still unfolding, but you will be there. And if this message resonated with you, let me know in the comments. Share the subscribe and like. And thank you so much for being here. I'll see you in the next video.